Good morning, students of BA Part 2nd. This is Dr. Anshoo Sharma. Welcome once again. This is in continuation to yesterday's lecture. I had introduced and read and talked a little about the poem by Kamla Das, that is My Grandmother's House. Now, the poem is here before you on your screens. Let's quickly go through what the poet is trying to tell us through this poem. Um, you can see that the poem is again something talking about her past. It is a very nostalgic poem, and again two very prominent things that come to our mind is that on one hand she is talking about the happy times that she spent with her grandmother, and at the same time she is just juxtaposing it with the present time, which apparently is not so happy. And the other person who is framed within this poem is her husband, who is not actively participating. It is basically, the poem is a monologue, and it is the poet Kamla Das's voice that we hear. And neither the grandmother is present, because grandmother, of course, is long ago dead. She is no longer alive, so she is not amongst us at the moment. But her memories are there with Kamla Das, and she's talking about those memories in this poem. And the other person who's very much alive and present at this moment when she's writing this poem or when she's reading these words, that is her husband. And though he is present physically, but there is no dialogue or there is no response recorded of his. So you can see that she's taking us back into the past when she says, in the very first line, she says, "There is a house now far away where once I received love." So, this is a kind of, far away. When she uses this word, it conveys distance. And this is not only distance, that is the physical distance, because here, please understand that no doubt at the moment she is sitting in a city, very much she's sitting in a place which is far away from her paternal home, that is Malabar. So that distance, that physical distance is there, that she's talking about. The house, physical house, is very far away from the present place where she resides, first. And second, this distance is also referring to the time that has passed between her childhood and her adulthood. The time that is now no longer that she can get hold of, no longer that she can catch. Then she talks about the place and the time. So please keep these two things in mind. It is the place as well as the time which is being referred to. And she says that those were the times and that was the place where she received a lot of love. And she received that love from her grandmother. That woman died. Now, that woman, it's almost, she's trying to create a kind of distance. She's trying to emotionally place her grandmother far away, and she's trying to portray her as a woman who is not directly concerned with her, though this is not the case. So she's trying to kind of put the regret, or you can say the sad feelings away by placing her grandmother as someone who is a woman with whom she has no concern. Though this is not entirely true, because it was her grandmother who gave her a lot of love, and she is someone never to be forgotten. So that woman died, that is, the grandmother died, and the house withdrew into silence. Now, this I had even earlier I have explained it to you, that she is personifying the house as if it is someone, as if it is a living person, as if it is a human being who is, because of sadness, because of loneliness, has become very quiet, has gone into complete silence. So it is basically the house which is no longer occupied by people, which is no longer occupied by her grandmother, which is no longer occupied by the laughter of, the loving family. So this house has become completely silent. There is no laughter, there is no happiness, there is no love that is to be shared any longer. And what happens at such places which are deserted? Snakes moved among books I was then too young to read. So now again, this is she's trying to kind of highlight how neglected, or how far away, or how dilapidated, or maybe how unhappy that place has become now, because all those books which are supposed to give you a lot of reading pleasure, which are supposed to give you a lot of time that has been spent happily, all that is now lost. And the snakes seem to be moving among those books, because there is nobody to take care of those books any longer. And there is, again in this line also, there is regret, because when she lived in that house, when she had access to those books, when she could have read those books, the problem was that she was too young. She was a child, and perhaps she was not old enough to read those books, to be able to read those books, those big, huge books, those story books, or maybe history books, or maybe books of philosophy. So she says there were many books, and the books still exist, but the problem is that when she had access to those books, she did not have the capability of reading them. And now, when she has grown up and she has the capability of reading those books, but the problem is that those books are no longer accessible to her. Those books, she cannot get hold of those books, because those books are lying far away in her grandmother's house, and she is living in a city now. Then she says, and my blood turned cold like the moon. Now, here you have an example of a simile, because she is comparing her heart, she is comparing her blood to the moon. And moon is supposed to be very cold, it is far away, it is white in color. And we all know that the sun is supposed to signify heat, while the moon is supposed to signify the cold, because sun is like a burning orb. It's full of heat, it's full of light, it's full of fire. And on the other hand, the moon is absolutely cold, it is silent, it is cool. So here she compares her blood, or she compares her heart to the moon that is absolutely cold. So what she is trying to say is that that passion which she used to experience earlier when she was a child, that passion has now cooled down. She no longer, that fire is no longer burning her in her veins, that fire is missing from her blood. How often I think of going there to peer through blind eyes of windows. Now this is again a very beautiful description she is giving, that very often I have seen that I should go back to that house and try to look inside through the windows. And she says, peer through the blind eyes, peer, to peep inside, to look inside through the blind eyes. Now blind eyes is a very interesting way of explaining two things. Firstly, blind eyes, because when you peep inside something which is very dark, you are unable to see for a few minutes, because you are standing out inside in the sun. And this is a common experience, that when we are surrounded by very bright light, or when we are out in the sunlight, immediately when we enter for some minutes, we are unable to see anything. It takes some time, it takes a few seconds for our eyes to adjust to the darkness. So she is explaining this very beautifully, that when I would look inside that dark room, I would be blind, because I would not be able to see anything inside that darkness. And the other hint is, blinds are usually kind of curtains that are put over windows. Okay, so that is also it. She may be referring to those windows which are covered by curtains. So you cannot actually look inside those windows, because the view is obstructed through those blinds or curtains. And she says to just listen to the frozen air. Just listen to the frozen air, because she is unable to see anything inside. All she can do is she can listen. And why does she say the frozen air? Because there is nobody living there any longer. There is no movement, there is no life, except those wild animals. There is nothing else living, there's nobody else living in that house. So everything is frozen. everything is silent, everything is like there is no movement, and there is death and desolation everywhere. So that is why she is using the word frozen. So all she can do is she can listen, try and listen. And what will she be able to hear? In the present, she'll may be able to hear the snakes moving. She may be able to hear the crickets. She may be able to hear some rats moving around from one place to another. But at the same time, what else can she listen to? She can go back to her past memories and she can listen to all those frozen moments, all those memories of laughter, love, talks, listening to stories from her grandmother. All those voices can be heard in her mind, in her heart, but not actually. Okay? Then, or in wild despair, pick an armful of darkness to bring it here to lie behind my bedroom like a brooding dog. Or in wild despair, now because she does not get anything, now this is all her imagination, okay? That she would go to that house, she would look inside, she would experience the frozen air, and what would she get in return? She would only be disappointed because the past cannot be relived again. So, this despair is reference to the disappointment that she would get hold of, and all she would do is pick an armful of darkness. Now, this is a very poetic way of putting it, that because nothing is, no color, no life is any longer left inside that house. All that is there is now is darkness, and all that she can do is carry that darkness with her. Now this is, please try and understand how beautifully she is describing what she would get hold of if she happens to go back to her grandmother's house. She would only be able to bring darkness, and it would lie behind her bedroom like a watchful thoughtful dog. Again, this is a comparison, this is a simile. Like for example, you have an old dog in your house, and then he becomes dull after a certain age, and your pet dogs, they start being very silent, and they are just, they keep lying in your room besides your bed or maybe behind the door. So this memory, this blackness, this darkness that she would carry from her grandmother's house, that she is comparing to an old faithful dog. So that is all that she has now, that is all that she can hold. And she says, now she says, you cannot believe, darling, can you? Now she's questioning, now who's this darling? This darling is reference to her husband. She's addressing her husband who is physically present right next to her. And she's questioning him that when I describe my childhood home, when I describe my grandmother's home, it is difficult for you to believe that I had such a huge, beautiful home and I had such a loving grandmother. In the present circumstances, it is difficult for you to believe that I lived in such a house, that I was a proud owner of such a house, and I lived in a house where I was totally, completely surrounded with love. Whose love? Her grandmother's love. So she says, can you believe that I lived in such a house and was proud and loved? I who have lost my way. Now, again, contrast, again, juxtaposition of two contrasting things. On the one hand, is her grandmother's house where she was completely, totally surrounded with warmth and love. And now, in the present time, what is it? What is she stating? That it is that warm love that she misses. It is that kind of love which she does not receive in the present time. And she says that now what have I done? I have lost my way and beg now at strangers' doors. Strangers' doors? Now this is unknown people. Like for example, people who lack affection, who lack love, who lack warmth in their personal life, they tend to look for the same from maybe their friends, maybe their colleagues at work, because there's something missing in their lives, there's something missing in their personal lives, and they try to look for it amongst strangers. Now strangers here can mean anybody. It can mean your neighbors, it can mean your friends, it can mean your colleagues. So she says that now I'll go to people's homes looking for that kind of love, I now beg for that kind of love. I request, I try my best to receive that kind of love, at least in small change. Now, this is very poignant. This is like very touching that if I cannot get that grand love, if I cannot get that, great amount of love that I used to receive at my grandmother's home, at least if not that amount, even if I get a little bit, even if I get a fraction of that kind of love, I would be kind of, if not happy, at least I would rest assured that there is somebody to care for me, there is somebody to love me. And this is the kind of condition that she has reached now, that she is looking for small change. Now, small change, this is the image of money. Like you have a huge note, maybe a 500 rupee note or a 2000 rupee note on one hand, and on the other hand you just have a 1 rupee coin or a 2 rupee coin. So look at the difference in the amount, so that is the kind of comparison that she's drawing, that if her grandmother's home afforded her love that was, say for example, as big as 2000 rupee note, in comparison now what she's getting, she's just getting some change. The kind of love she's getting may be equal to 1 rupee or 2 rupees. You're trying to get that image? Please try and understand what she's trying to say. She's using the imagery of money to explain the difference between the vastness, between the greatness, between the huge amount of love that she received from her grandmother to the very little amount of love that she receives during her present time, during her present life, maybe from her husband, most probably from her husband. This is what she's trying to tell him, that that your love is not sufficient, or the amount of love that I get from you is insufficient, or the amount of love that you give me, that you shower upon me, is very nominal in comparison to the love that I received from my grandmother. So you can see that it's a very short 16 line poem only. There is no rhyme scheme as such. It's a free verse, and from one line to the other, there is a continuous movement, and there is the comparison between the past and the present. There is comparison between the love that she received when she was a child and the love that she receives now when she is an adult. And there is a kind of nostalgia, there's a kind of a sadness running in it throughout, that all those memories that she has are now only memories. They have not been recreated, or they have not been replenished by love in the present times from her husband. So this is what Kamala Das is talking about in this poem. It's a fairly easy poem. I do not think there is much of a problem in understanding. Even the language that has been used is very simple. And I would request all of you to please go through the poem. And I have given you the basic meanings of all the words. And I have also explained all the contrasts and all the comparisons that she's doing, and what exactly she's trying to tell us in the poem is also coming across very clearly. So dear students, if you have any problem, please get in touch with me over the WhatsApp. Till then, stay safe, take care, and bye bye for now.